Greetings! Happy Monday, everyone. Welcome to the Green Spa Network's first ever Hangout. I'm happy that you're here today, and today we'll be hearing from two of our main speakers for our upcoming 8th Annual GSN Congress in Yosemite next month. Simon Robinson. Hi, Simon.
Hi, folks.
Simon's joining us from Sao Paulo in Brazil. And what's going on in Brazil today, Simon?
Well, there's actually, it's been quite a crazy weekend. There's a very big, Sao Paulo is a city of about 17, 18 million people. And this weekend there was a big sustainability event that has as its philosophy, if the majority of people in a country are actually living in metropolitan areas, let's bring sustainability into the cities. So this is a huge event with hundreds of different, sub activities. So it's been brilliant, people meeting all over Sao Paulo to discuss every aspect of sustainability.
That's exciting. That's exciting. I wish I could be there. Great. Thank you, Simon. And we also have, you can see on your screen, I think, Larry Prochazka joining us as well from Longmont, Colorado. Hi, Larry.
Hello. Hi. Less exotic than Sao Paulo, but still lovely.
Just as exotic.
We had a interesting. Hadn't thought about that till this moment, but there's an initiative that they're discussing in Longmont now about adding curbside composting to the EcoCycle program. So
nice.
I'm counting about 100,000, so not near the millions, but it's an interesting initiative.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to hear about sustainability efforts succeeding every day. I love that part of my job. So let me give you all a little bit of background on both Larry and Simon, and then I'll get out of the way and turn the conversation over to them. So Larry is a master facilitator. He's returning for his second year with GSN to work with our group at our Congress event. Larry inspires people to live with a clearer purpose and meaning in their lives, and he has a very warm, flexible, and authentic style that really fits with GSN and the spa industry in general. I think back to last year's event, and I'm just filled with warmth because I really enjoyed how Larry engaged everyone at Congress last year. Not just in the tips and tricks and the technical side of things with regards to how to green your spas, but more who you're being in the matter and how to bring that to the table. So Larry has facilitated programs for Fortune 100 companies, government, nonprofit, educational organizations, the likes of the Discovery Channel, IBM, Microsoft, the Department of Navy, Air Force, as well as the American Heart Association, the International Spa Association. He's also been an adjunct faculty member with Johns Hopkins University. So, Larry, it's great to have you facilitating our Congress again this year. Is there anything you want to share about your preparations and what you anticipate for the event next month?
The thing that triggers in my mind just listening to your introduction is a time in my life where I didn't feel particularly authentic. And, I can look back 20 years ago on this field and kind of gauging what I wanted to do by looking at other people's behaviors. And then I started realizing I wasn't even sure that a lot of other speakers or facilitators believed what they were talking about, because it just didn't. So for example, I had a facilitator I worked with who absolutely refused to share anything personal. And after that training, I'm like, people connected to me and they would ask me questions, but they kind of shied away from her. So, we're the theme, the topic, sustainability, but it's also last year looking at the spirit of leadership, this year looking at the energy of moving mountains. To me, that really comes from an authentic presence means I'm really connected deeply to myself in the essence, and I know who I am. I have a sense of how I need to show up in the world. And so from a personal standpoint, that's the energy I want to bring to the Congress. And I had this image pop through my head about how ironic, in a way, that we're meeting in Yosemite Valley, and Yosemite's been there for eons. Now, the heart and soul and core of Yosemite hasn't changed, but the entire world around it has. And so that kind of strikes with me. That question is, we're living in a world that's constantly changing day by day, minute by minute, and yet what part of us, at our core, at our essence, the part that really forms the identity of who we are when we're at our best, when our life really works for us, I don't believe that core changes a lot. So I feel like that's one of the things I bring through whatever discussions, exercises, processes I bring in, is really helping people get out of the busyness, get away from the multitasking, get away from constantly being on their phone and answering text and what have you, and just have a few moments of reprieve to be with themselves. So that's part of the beauty of being at these events, is people get to get away from the office and go rub shoulders with other people that are committed to the profession, also committed to sustainability, and to have some real live authentic conversations that don't evolve around problems and solutions and overwhelm and that sort of thing. So just in a generic sense, that's what I'm wanting to bring in. And I think also, just for those of that were there last year, I want to build a little bit, just at least as a reminder on what we did last year, because that whole notion of starting with why and knowing why it is that we do what we do just had such a powerful influence on the Congress that I'm doing whatever I can do on a day-by-day basis to maintain the vitality of that awareness, and I want to bring a little bit of that reminder back. So
that's going to be great, Larry, because I've been working with the messages from last year's Congress as well, with finding your why and our how, both personally and also with our board and with the Greenspot Network and our strategic plan. And it's such a rich conversation. Glad to be forwarding that more this year. And in particular, with regards to sustainability, I just want to underscore one theme throughout this conversation, as well as our Congress coming up and GSN in general, and that is that it's very easy to mistake what GSN is about or what sustainability is about with just tips and tricks or specific actions that can be taken. And I say mistake because sustainability is a concept that is very challenging to fit into our current or traditional way of thinking. When one tries to do that, when I try to do that, it gets frightening, like downright frightening pretty quickly, if not overwhelming. And so I'm, I don't know if comforted is the right word, but I'm really supported by the idea that there are people out there that are working to change, to address the conversation of changing our paradigm and changing our thinking and changing the way we look at things and how we communicate. And I find that reframing those things all of a sudden makes sustainability less of a burden or something that has to do with doing more with less, or a lack, or an expense, or a cost, and much more about abundance and about fulfillment for everybody. So I know, it's exciting to have you back this year, Larry, at Congress, and really exciting as well to be adding Simon's message at this point.
I wanted to make a comment about that too. It's interesting thing that I don't read a lot, but I have lots of awareness that pops in on occasion, and one of those has been when people are going through this process. So sustainability, for example, that gets to a point of feeling overwhelmed. In the absence of clarity, what people have a tendency to do is to fall back to what's familiar.
Right.
If that was working, you wouldn't have an issue.
Exactly.
So with that being said, what also I'm really excited about is, Simon and I haven't met in person, but we've had a number of conversations, and he's shared their information. And there's nothing about holonomics that smacks to me of tips and tricks.
Right.
That there's kind of a flavor. And Simon, I'm going to just ask this question as we get ready to have you kind of introduce. There's a flavor to me of useful, practical, pragmatic tools that will make a difference for you and your organization, but also you and your life. And so as opposed to tips and tricks, it just feels like there's a really natural flow with those principles coming into that whole notion of being authentic and being clear on your message and not taking on too much. So I'm really excited to be a part of that and to be doing some of that together with Simon when we get together.
Marvelous, marvelous, marvelous. So let's get on with things here. I'm sharing a beautiful picture of Simon and his lovely wife, Maria. And Simon is the founder of Holonomics Education. He's been an international keynote speaker, including Sustainable Brands in London and San Diego, as well as TEDx talks. He's also been the founder of one of the world's first mobile internet portals, Genie Internet, which some of you may remember from a long time ago, which received many internet awards for innovation. He's also been the developer of cutting-edge innovations in technology and new media for a variety of international companies. And he runs a blog, a fantastic blog called transitionconsciousness.org, and is also a contributor to the Harvard Business Review. Simon and his wife both wrote Holonomics, co-authored it together, and founded Holonomics Education, which is a consultancy helping organizations, as we're discussing, to think and innovate differently and allow the development of high-value customer experiences, the development of powerful, effective strategies for business, and meaningful and sustainable brands. Their book, Holonomics, Business Where People and Planet Matter, was nominated as one of the top sustainability titles by Sustainable Brands this year. So thank you for being here, Simon. And just before I hand off the presentation, I want to go through a couple of quick housekeeping items. If you do want to have the opportunity to ask questions, there is a Q&A window that you can access through your screen. And also a recording of this conversation will be available both on Google Plus and on YouTube by the end of the day today. And as well, if you want more information about our Congress event coming up next month, we still do have a few spots if you want to join us. And there's a link to our website in the showcase section, or you can go to greenspanetwork.org. So without any further delay, Simon, let's begin with you, okay? Simon, I love how your work with sustainability is rooted in more than just what people should do and why they should do it, but more importantly in paying attention to thinking about how we think and communicate. So you talk about pillars for Holonomics, the dynamics of seeing, the dynamics of nature, and the dynamics of business and human values. Can you tell us all more about these perspectives and introduce everyone to Holonomics?
Yeah, thank you very much, Paul, for that introduction, and thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of the Green Spa Network, the Congress. It's fantastic. It really resonated with me to find out that the Green Spa Network is very much about vital people and vital planet, and that, of course, really resonates, with what we're doing with Holonomics. Can I just check, are people seeing me or not?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to check that people can see seeing my picture.
I think we can see you fine, thanks.
It's
good
not
picture.
Okay. So yeah, what is Holonomics? If we actually look at what the problem is that we're trying to solve, there's very much a recognition now that maybe we do need to move into more sustainable business models. And a lot of companies, they're searching for new business models, they're searching for new ways of doing business. But the problem is that if you try and implement a new business model, but with the traditional way of thinking, because a lot of these new business models, they're very much influenced by complex systems in nature. This is biomimicry as applied to organizations. So we need to change the way we think about how we as people are now working in networks as opposed to more traditional fixed hierarchies. But there's another problem in that before you can really understand what a complex system is, you really have to shift your way of thinking. So this is why in Holonomics we first talk about the dynamics of seeing. And so in Holonomics we're really trying to, there are two sides of the Holonomics coin, so to speak. The first is understanding wholeness in systems. So holonomics, it catches people unawares. It's a little bit of a wolf in a sheep's clothing, and we're really going deep into what is a system and how can we truly understand a whole system in all its aspects, not just maybe from the more scientific way of modeling a system mathematically, logically, and doing that kind of analytical way of understanding a system, but also understanding the meaning of the system and understanding our experience, our human experience of actually being and living in systems, rather than just thinking about us being separate from the systems we claim to be studying. So I've got a big kind of philosophical background in terms of really trying to get to grips with what is this notion of wholeness and how can we truly understand living dynamic systems. The other part of holonomics and the other side of the coin is the need for leaders especially to really live human values. So what are the human values? The 5 universal human values we work with are peace, truth, love, right action, and non-violence. And so this is where, Maria has done a lot of studying of, human values. She studied the Indian educational system, human values in education. And what Maria brings to holonomics is this great desire to introduce this program, which was originally designed for children, into very major organizations. So this is something we do that's quite surprising to people. Our whole thing, holonomics, it's very much about how do you really implement profound organizational change. You implement profound organizational change by doing 2 things. Taking people through a learning journey where they can really transform their consciousness. And this isn't just paying lip service to this word consciousness or conscientiousness. What we do with business executives and managers and people in large organizations with large brands, we really show people how they need to change their consciousness to really understand what is happening inside their organization. And then once we've done that, we really talk about human values: peace, truth, love, right action, and non-violence. This is really that gets the heart of what we do, because we're introducing these human values into national and global banks, mining companies, engineering companies, very, very big organizations that you wouldn't necessarily would think would listen to, two authors who are saying, look, we need peace, truth, love, right action, and non-violence. But they really are starting to listen, because the old ways of working are not working anymore, especially when you try and bring together disparate people from different parts, not just of a single organization, but from different groups inside a multinational, because there's a real desire to be sustainable in every sense of the word, to be more agile. And when you really get stuck in a hierarchy, when you really get stuck having to rely on rules and regulations and not trust people, then you become less agile, then the organization gets stuck, then it becomes much more difficult to change. So that in a nutshell is holonomics, really changing our levels of consciousness so we can completely rethink our understanding and experience of systems. And then really, once we've broken down this way of understanding other things and other people as separate, fragmented, and different to us, then we also introduce human values as well. And it completely transforms the relationships. Because ultimately, we have a definition of sustainability. And our definition of sustainability is the quality of relationships. The quality of relationships with other people, the quality of our relationship with nature. And so with this definition of sustainability, what we found is that, we're not working globally, but, we're talking internationally, but we're working mainly with companies here in Brazil. It's a message that I feel this year particularly is now being well received. And it's very exciting to be able to take this message to the Green Spa network, because one of the things that really attracted me, or one of the things that I found very amazing about, you know, the invitation was, it's not just about me getting up on stage and maybe talking for an hour and doing it. With this invitation that I'm very grateful for, it's allowing me to not only do the keynote but also do 2 different workshops. In partnership with Larry, we've been having these conversations about, you know, how can we really work with, how can we build, sorry, on the great work that you've already been doing as a network. And so it's going to be a very, very deep dive into holonomics, holonomic thinking, rethinking what a spa is, rethinking all the relationships between the parts, because obviously I know that in the network it's not just spas, you also have a lot of suppliers as well, and they're going to form an absolutely crucial part, a crucial dynamic to, you know, the evolution of green spas, because, you know, holonomics is very holistic. We take a very holistic vision, so it's very, very exciting. And I know we've got a bit more time to go a bit deeper. We can talk a little bit about, well, what are the different bits, but that's really the nutshell. So in holonomics, we have the holonomics platform, the dynamics of seeing, the dynamics of nature, the dynamics of business and human values, and then this allows us to really go deep into what is preventing profound organizational change, be it an organization, a business, a network, and then we can start to really look at what your strategy is, what your purpose is, where you're struggling to execute your strategy, and how we can really develop our propositions where people and planet matter.
So, Simon, that triggers a couple recent experiences for me. And I'd say about 7 or 8 years ago, I was becoming acutely aware that a lot of requests for me to come in and work with companies, their intent was really to use me as a 2x4 to hit people over the head, to force people to do what they wanted to do. And when I felt a situation smacked like that at all, one of the questions I began asking the leader was, in some hopefully tactful way, what if you're the problem? You know, what if it's your leadership style? What if is it the way you're interacting with people that's causing this behavior to show up? Are you open and willing to look at that? And, you know, to me, that really smacks about what you're talking about. The old models are not working. The old way of seeing things is failing us. And the effort people have is to try to do more of what they're familiar with that clearly is not working. So, I know that session you're going to do, I think your first session is going to be on that whole notion of leadership. So is there a way that, you know, that you can speak a little bit more about that? Because to me, that's that authentic piece that's important to me, is you don't open your mouth and you send messages to people around you and they respond to those. So can you talk about that for just a moment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a huge word is authenticity. And another, I know like you do a lot of dialogue work, we do a lot of dialogue work. But within, I mentioned that holonomics is about really understanding a whole system. And if we actually look at working with leaders, our first approach is, we feel, Maria and I, we really feel we have to have a level of humility. Yeah. It's not about criticizing leaders, because they have reached their very high position in their organizations using a certain logic that did work in a previous era. So suddenly going in saying, oh, this doesn't make sense, it doesn't work. We have to have a level of humility to really get into understanding the problems from the perspective of these business leaders, and really starting to work with them in that manner. The next thing one of the early things I want to talk about in my keynote is, as well as the holonomics platform, there is what we call the holonomics mental operating system. And this is a very, very powerful concept. It's a little bit like chess, you know, and it's very easy to understand the moves. You know, it takes a short while to actually grasp, but it takes a long time to master. And the holonomics mental operating system is saying that we really have to upgrade our mental operating system now to deal with complex problems, sustainable problems. What our holonomics mental operating system is, it's a way of alerting people to the fact that there's more than one way of knowing the world. There are different ways of knowing reality. And the 4 ways of knowing that we discuss are thinking, feeling, sensing, and intuition. Now, what I'm seeing in a lot of leadership writing right now is a recognition that a lot of leaders, maybe they have been stuck in a thinking, analytical, logical mode of thinking, and this now isn't enough. But a lot of literature is saying, oh, you need to be intuitive. But this word intuitive, it's using the word intuition in the common sense use of the word, where it's about feelings, gut feel, that type of way of using intuition. For me, though, this whole notion of feeling, it's a very delicate word. Yeah, it's not about emotions. It's almost, I would call it an artistic level of consciousness.
Yeah.
Which is where if you achieve a certain level of mindfulness, you can really get a feeling for the complexity, the interactions, getting a feeling for the people you're working with. And often when we're stuck in thinking, we actually experience our lives inside our heads. And some people never really manage to break out of this, and it's like they're really cut off. But in the world of sustainability, a lot of sustainability activists, for example, both inside organizations and outside, they have a great feeling for their connection to nature, a great feeling for the issues. But this is where we start to get into huge communication problems. If someone's predominant way of knowing and communicating is feeling, and they're trying to get their message across to senior business leaders who are all about thinking. So this is the first kind of dimension.
Yeah.
However, in holonomics, we actually go much beyond this, because there's another dimension as well, which is from the sensory to the intuitive. And again, we do a lot of work with color to help people understand, the fact that we live and inhabit a sensory world, and we can trust our senses. And in fact, one of the amazing things for me about the concept of a spa is that, nowadays there's a real trend, I think, to move away from just the mindless purchase of consumer goods, and the desire to have more and more meaningful experiences. And we're seeing people go to restaurants where you blindfold yourself so you can get a much deeper sensory experience of the food. This is quite an interesting trend. And again, especially when you look at what is your customer experience, sometimes we completely forget the sensory aspects. Then the final dimension is the intuitive. And for me, intuition is a very fantastic thing, because for me, you can separate it from feeling, in that it's intuition where we gain a deepest sense of the phenomena that we're studying. So it's intuition that actually leads to things like scientific insights. Yeah, it's not it's interesting looking at the creative process in science, because in fact, science doesn't progress through logical, analytical steps. If you actually look at, the great scientific insights, it comes from an intuition that is quite difficult to explain, but it's where scientists get this deep intuitive sense of what their mathematics, what the science is telling them, and then they have this great effort to kind of translate the intuitive insight into thinking mathematical models. But it's intuition, we can develop our intuitive side as well. And once we become more mindful, that we can expand our level of consciousness and develop this intuitive way of thinking in balance with feeling, in balance with sensory knowing, in balance with thinking, then it's we teach MBA students, and for some of them they say, oh my word, it's like you've just given us a whole new window on the world. And so this is quite a long way of answering your question. what we do, we have a number of exercises, a number of ways of working with people, which rapidly gives them an experience of sensing, an experience of feeling, and an experience of intuition. And this really shows them that, you know what, maybe we need to rethink how we think about how we're constructing reality. And when we do this with senior business leaders, then they rapidly understand that, in fact, we're not attacking them personally. There's nothing wrong with them as people, with them as leaders, but we try and open them to these other ways of understanding reality. And this, I would say, is probably the thing that single-handedly really enables authentic dialogue, a deeper understanding of experiencing what's happening in an organization, and also a deeper connection to this concept of brand. And we'll talk about brands and the customer experience in a minute. But it's a way of moving from people in an organization as experiencing themselves as separate from and distant from everything else in the organization, to really seeing how the essence of the organization fully is expressed in each and every part. And this is where our experience of wholeness comes from. Wholeness for me isn't putting together disparate parts and saying, now we've put things together, now we have a whole system. It's much deeper than that. There's a dynamic relationship between the whole and the parts, and this is something that I'm really looking forward to exploring at the conference.
So for me, that also speaks to when that wholeness is present, there is a greater sense of aliveness and vitality. And I believe, I had a part-time job with Starbucks that turned into a 2.5-year experience because it was so amazing. And I started having the feeling that people could feel that energy the moment they came to our store. So, I resonate. Einstein is an example of what you were talking about scientifically, because he knew for years, he had an intuitive flash, an insight about the theory of relativity. And he said he spent the next X number of years in the laboratory proving it, but he knew there was no doubt in his mind.
Yeah.
And, I look back at my own journey from getting my doctorate and getting through graduate school and not being entitled to have an opinion unless I could back it up with 3 or 4 resources. And I got out of there feeling crippled. And I would never, ever have developed into a good facilitator if I hadn't developed that ability to let go of the mind running everything and to go into the moment. I would be so tense, I would get in my car to drive home, and in the drive home I would relax, and all of a sudden these ideas would pop in that I could see moments in the training that I missed. And I saw moments where an exercise or a story or a way of engagement would have been helpful. And I really made the commitment to bring my life into balance in such a way that I had that insight in the training and not in my car driving home. So yeah, I think we're going to have some fun. I have that whole process. My experience a lot of times similar to what you said is people confuse emotions for feeling, and they're not the same thing. And when I tap into that feeling, the time in my life where that is, and I'd say it's probably not accurate to say it that way, but when I'm traveling, I don't make a decision till it feels right. And when it feels right, something opens up, magic happens, people show up, connections happen that aren't supposed to happen. So I may bring in some example and experience of that for part of one of my facilitation sessions. So
yeah, no,
I'm excited.
I'm absolutely looking forward to that. So if we actually look at, how, obviously you and I, we've had some conversations, and also with Paul and the whole Green Spa Network team. So just to really explain how we want everything to flow, I've got the program in front of me, the full program, and there are some fantastic breakout sessions and workshops. But yeah, we're gonna be starting with you, Larry. You're going to be doing an introduction, connecting people with what happened last year, and then I want to really start off and explore in much more detail the dynamics of seeing. And the way I want to run the keynote, I don't just want it to be me talking, for the hour. We're going to be doing a couple of exercises. It's going to be quite crazy because normally I tend to do workshops with maybe 30, 40 people. We were doing a workshop at Sustainable Brands Rio de Janeiro last week. That was absolutely full with 100 people, and I think there's going to be quite a few more people than that. But there's going to be some great energy, and we're going to have a lot of fun with the dynamics of doing some exercises. It can work with that number of people.
Fantastic.
And then I really want to go into leadership. And again, just to, I know there'll be people listening to this Hangout who are going to be coming to the Congress. Again, what we didn't want to do is just bring my kind of an off-the-shelf holonomics workshop on leadership to the Congress. I think what's been really fantastic for me is the program has kind of been building iteratively as we explore, what you guys were already doing last year, what I think I can contribute with our understanding of leadership. And you and I were talking about this earlier. There are some difficult things that we do need to deal with, maybe the shadow side of things. Because if I look at a lot of presentations, a lot of trends now in sustainability, there's a lot of talk about collaboration, a lot of talk about, in terms of sustainable innovation, in terms of co-creation. There's a lot of talk about the sharing economy. But again, for me, it's so important to always bear in mind human values and authenticity, because without the lived presence of human values, co-creation, collaboration, sharing, they're just new words for this old kind of competitive, ego-driven competition. And I actually still see this in the sustainability world. There's still a lot of competition, between consultants, between businesses. And also I sometimes see, I've actually participated in co-creation events where I've just thought, oh crumbs, there has been such a desire to control the outcome that the facilitators have willingly ignored other people's contributions because that wasn't the answer that they wanted. And so I try and deal, in terms of my approach, I have a huge heart. I really try and be honest with people, because if we don't have honesty about what's really happening, we'll never really be able to go through some profound change. But I try and use humor as well. And I went to one, actually Maria and I, we went to one co-creation event, and it took us a few months to really process what had happened. And there was one lunchtime, and I just said, you know what, that's not a network they're building, that's a not work. And I just said this word, and it kind of stuck, a not work, a network with ego. So in terms of talking about a not work, this is something that is absolutely vital for business leaders, because without a dynamic way of seeing deeply what is happening in your organization, you can think that you're creating a network, but in fact you've actually got yourself a not work where communication isn't flowing, egos are bashing, and the truly creative insights that want to emerge aren't emerging. So you and I are really looking forward to this particular section, because we are going to go deep into this, but we're going to have a lot of fun as well. Because once we deal with this, then the other big thing that I want to talk about, or that we will be covering on the second day, is the customer experience. But you can only deliver a truly outstanding customer experience when every single part of a system belongs together authentically. And sometimes when you get these clashes, there's a huge role for leaders to really develop authentic networks, because it's only when you have an authentic network that you can really deliver what I call a customer experience with soul. I did a TEDx talk earlier this year where I introduced this concept of a customer experience with soul. And just to explain what this is, there is still a big problem with many companies. They're not truly delivering great customer experiences. But for me, a lot of companies, they try and improve their customer experience by breaking the system down into parts. So it's a reductionist approach to understanding the customer experience. And some companies, they'll just focus on what they call the value moments. They'll try and find which moment in the customer experience is of the highest monetary value, to them and to the customer. And then by fragmenting and reducing this whole customer experience, they then say, right, we're just going to work on that bit. But a customer experience with soul, it really comes from the philosophy of wholeness in holonomics, where the whole comes to presence through each and every part. And so one of the kind of radical things that we've been doing this year is we've been working with, in terms of strategy, we've been working with people in HR departments and we're trying to expand the role of HR to say, look, you now have a very strategic role in helping your whole organization offer, and develop customer experiences with soul, where the whole comes to presence authentically through each part, where every single person is authentically expressing, the customer experience. And for me, one of the other things that I would point out is that there are still some business leaders who think the customer experience is separate from them. I know I keep talking about separation as opposed to this experience of wholeness. But there are some business leaders, writers, presenters, gurus. They talk an interesting talk, but when you then go up and try and have an interaction with them, your interaction is not exactly of the quality, or it doesn't really have the qualities of the things that they've been talking about. So what I do say to some people is that you are your customer experience, and the customer experience fully comes to presence in the interactions of people who are not your customers. And why do I say that? Because that really shows you who is working authentically and who is kind of just talking the talk. And I think this will really help people. I really want to start helping people explore customer experience from a holonomic perspective, because then you can do some really amazing things. And just to give you an example, I'd like to give an example, a real example from Brazil. Brazil is going through a massive economic crisis right now. There's a very big political crisis with corruption, as I'm sure you guys have seen on television. And the economy is going through a very difficult period. But there's one, it's not a spa, it's a beauty salon called Laces and Hair. And despite all the challenges that Brazil has, their first quarter this year in 2015, they experienced growth of 24% compared to the same first quarter last year. Why did they manage to grow? They're not growing exponentially. They're very mindful about their growth, but they are absolutely first and foremost focused on the customer experience. And it's interesting because not only are they a beauty salon, but they have actually developed their own line of beauty treatments, hair care products that are 100% organic. And it's very interesting that they're really seeing now a desire of their clientele to have much more natural products in their hair. And they don't have a vision of, oh, it's all about sell, sell, sell. Their vision and understanding of hair care is also about training. It's not just about selling products. It's about how can we help our customers care for their hair, not just when they're in the beauty salon, but how can we help them undertake a long-term program of hair care when they're in their own houses. And this is fascinating because they absolutely have focused on the customer experience, and also they've put a huge amount of, they've put a lot of investment into training all of the people. I can't remember exactly, I think they have about 64 members of staff across 3 units. And they are saying that it's this really having a very authentic care for the customer and thinking about every single aspect of the customer experience. You know, they've really tried to create a natural environment inside the beauty salon in this crazy metropolitan area that is Sao Paulo. And I think this is something that's really interesting that many other, say, business owners don't necessarily have a sensitivity to. And I would say that is a customer experience with soul, because it really comes from the heart. It's not thinking about, you know, how can we just expand and grow. It's about caring and nurturing their business through very difficult situations, and really going back to how can we truly serve the customer with very sustainable products. And of course the products are sustainable, but it's not just enough now to have a sustainable product line. It's how do the customers experience these products, connect with the products, and how can we really help not only businesses, but, you know, how can we really help every member of the Green Spa network really develop their whole experience. It's not just develop the business, it's really how can we help them develop the customer experience. And what's interesting is that you've got, as I say, you've got both suppliers and spa owners. So this whole customer experience, it cuts across. It's not just one person's responsibility. You know, you really need holonomic thinking to really go into this. And so that's really the kind of learning journey that I'm hoping to take people on. And I think what's fantastic about you is that I think we really complement each other, you know, in our kind of personalities, our way of working. And I think people are going to have a lot of fun with this particular dynamic.
Well, you know, I already am, Simon, and I'm just, you know, thrilled about, not quite sure how to say this gently, but I'm thrilled about the authenticity and enthusiasm you bring to your work. It's not like you're talking about something, you're expressing something from your toes and your soul. So, and I know we're going over time, but this has been great. I'm just going to say it just still continues to surprise me that part of my work, and it sounds like that aspect of your work, we're reminding people to care.
Yeah.
So Paul, let me turn this back to you. I know this has been great. I'm just really happy to be a part of this, and once again to connect with both of you. So.
Sure, it's and it is by design that we've brought you guys together. You know, people who speak from their toes and have big hearts, you know, is the place to start, right? So, you know, I'm listening to your words, Simon, and kind of biting my tongue a little bit here because I just, you know, I have so many questions, and I'm tracking with it, particularly from my experience as a spa director in the past and spa owner. So from that point of view, one of the challenges that I know many spa directors have is around engineering a style of leadership that's effective, that both works within the spa, which is an environment which has maybe at a very simple level, it could be seen, you know, has more of a grasp over your pillars, you know, of intuition and you know, and that style of leadership. And then on the other hand, a spa director is tasked with communicating up the chain, and with larger organizations. You know, in particular, I can remember my time with Fairmont Resorts, you know, and I had to do a lot of translating. I would leave a staff meeting with my spa staff, and we'd be talking about emotions and, you know, working on a whole different level. And I would, you know, rush off from that meeting, tuck my papers under my arm, and then find myself 4 minutes later, you know, in an executive committee meeting with a whole different feel to it, you know. And I often described my role as a spa director in part as providing a buffer. Some kind of buffer where the spa could run in its own very heartful way and still succeed within the context of the traditional business model. You know, and that was quite draining. So anyway, I'm just trying to bring a little bit of voice to a few things that some of the spa directors in the room are going to be like, okay, I got a handle on this, but how do I communicate? How do I make that happen while an organization is in transition like that? I mean, it's easy to say, okay, once we get there, life will be great. but it's about how do we get there, and who are you or who am I in the matter of that process as we're unfolding. Much more than we can get into in just an hour, and this was set up to be an introduction. But is there anything you can say about what I'm describing there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a very where do I start? I'll try and keep within the time.
We've got
yeah,
we've got 10 more minutes.
Oh, we do. Okay.
Yeah, we're okay.
This is you have the business leaders in an organization, and then you have the change agents. And a lot of change agents, they start off with great intentions, but then they sometimes get a bit disheartened because they're struggling to get their message across. And the reason is that you have to be someone, I describe it as you have to be someone who can walk between the worlds. So as you know, as well as both Maria and I, we have many years of working in corporate environments. So we're very used to the language, and it's really a case of getting to grips with, okay, well, what are the indicators that you need to be talking about? And one indicator that actually AT&T spoke about this at Sustainable Brands in San Diego, the Net Promoter Score, because you can have a huge impact on the Net Promoter Score once people really understand what social sustainability initiatives you're working with, and this really impacts on the objectives. So really, the other thing is that the other way in which Maria and I are working with Holonomics is that we actually start with the business objectives. We start with the business strategy, because a lot of kind of complaints or challenges that the directors have is they say, oh, no one understands our strategy, we're having difficulty communicating it, and it's not really, our strategy just isn't having an impact on the development, evolution, vitality of the business. And it's like, okay, well, maybe you've got some issues here that we need to look at. So it's not necessarily, I think in terms of how Maria and I work, we don't necessarily start with the areas that I've been talking about. It's really a case of, as I said, it's having this humility and saying, what are the business challenges you are having right now? And to be honest, we don't really talk about sustainability, or rather, we don't really use the word sustainability, even though in our heart and souls, we truly believe that companies have to go through this transformation. It's really a case of saying, what exactly is the business challenge that you're having? Oh, really? Maybe you need to start thinking about it like this. Because, for example, we talk about the business leaders, but then there's leadership. And so, for example, if you have a very dynamic way of thinking about leadership, who is the business leader? The business leader is kind of the person who can see a problem, take responsibility for a problem, and solve the problem. And this is important in a hotel or a spa, whereby maybe a very junior member of staff sees something that's not going quite right for a customer. Is it like the chief executive? Is it the board of directors that are going to have the biggest impact on the experience of the spa for the people? No, it's not. It's that person who can see that maybe, I don't know, someone's in a hotel room, they don't have the right number of towels. It might be something seemingly as small as that. But if those people are empowered to really solve each and every problem, if those people can feel like they can take a leadership role, it has a huge impact on the way in which the whole service, the quality of service, the essence of the spa is experienced, and the whole customer experience. That has a massive impact on the way in which people will recommend the spa, recommend the products for their friends and family. So really, it's a case of both Maria and I, we're very focused on the business challenges, but this is why some of the biggest literally some of the biggest companies in Brazil, from the president downwards, are embracing holonomics. Hopefully we'll be able to make an announcement at Green Spa Network with some people who we're working with. at presidential level, CEO level, they're really embracing holonomics. Not because we're saying, oh, by the way, yeah, we need to embrace sustainability and start from there. It's like, no, holonomics completely transforms the thinking of each and every person across the whole organization, and that is very powerful. That can really help with solving many of the problems that business leaders are facing today.
Well, and I'll throw out an undercurrent here that Simon and I've talked about. It feels like something in the timing of the cultural maturity of the world right now. I'd say in the last 2 or 3 years, I've seen in my work a deeper yearning for meaning, and people asking those questions about what matters. And part of that question is, how do I find a way to express myself at work that I'm not feeling like I have to leave my soul at the door and be productive and then recollect myself from my normal life? And I just feel like the model that you're bringing and the ideas that we're talking about and sharing is on a global level. There's that kind of question of like, well, wait a minute, what really matters? And am I really here to work and retire and then hope to live for a few good years, or how do I create that sense of vitality and meaning? So happy to be a part of this.
Yeah, it's as I say, countries like Brazil, many countries around the world, they're going through a crisis, but it's a huge opportunity to change. And for those people who kind of hear the calling, what an opportunity to really do something profound. I think that's what's quite exciting about, we haven't even begun to mention the 4 elements. I'll save that for the actual Congress. But, it's not working with one element. Paul was mentioning that, we want to deal with the 4 elements, and we have this model in holonomics of the qualities of thinking in the 4 elements. So that's very exciting. I think it's going to be a very profound Congress, and just from a personal perspective, when I heard it was in Yosemite, it's not going to be in a business hotel in San Francisco or LA. Personally, I don't know why. Maybe I'll find out once I'm there, but I just feel a huge calling as well to Yosemite, and I'm going to be doing the walks. I'm looking forward, to doing the walks before the main Congress, and that'll give me an opportunity to to really get to know some of the members of the network personally. I can't put it into words, but it's going to be very profound. I just know it in my heart.
I can't wait for Congress myself. It's really a remarkable event, and I'm excited that it's coming up, and really excited to have you there, Simon, to be continuing the work with you, Larry. This search for meaning that you talk about, Larry, and the crises that come up, to me, those are all just signs. Those are all just symptoms of a changing paradigm. They're symptoms of a culture that is beginning to realize that its current way of thinking is limited in a way that doesn't work. And to me, that's the philosophical foundation for sustainability, is and that very personal, intimate foundation for sustainability is just admitting to yourself, well, is what I'm doing gonna work? Is it gonna are we gonna be able to survive this? And those are all big and huge and dramatic sounding questions, and that's not to be dramatic about it and throw things out for people to be scared by, but it's a real deal. And I'm encouraged by folks like you, Simon, and Larry, and the Greenspot Network. We're here to be positive, and we're here to cause positive change, and to do that through celebration, and through inspiration, and through learning, and through collaboration. And I couldn't think of a better way to kick off our Congress event than with this conversation. So with that, we've got just a couple of minutes, and I'll turn it over to you guys for closing comments, and really invite everybody listening to this call now and in the future as a recording to find yourself at a GSN Congress either this year or coming up in future years. It's a life-changing event. It's not like any other spa industry event that exists right now, and really you're invited, open arms. So thank you everybody for coming today. Larry and Simon, any closing comments?
Simon?
Yeah, yeah. A couple of things. I know it's just been me talking today. I just really want to acknowledge the contribution Maria has given to holonomics. I know if it were possible, she would absolutely have loved, to be coming to Yosemite too. Sometimes with commitments, it's not always possible. I know she's been following. I just really wanted to make people ensure that people know that holonomics. It's not just me with a bit of Maria. Maria has put her heart and soul into it as well, and she's really been achieving some amazing things here in Brazil. Talking to very senior business leaders. Sometimes with my work, my work's a little bit more innovative, so I'm working at a slightly different level. But Maria, works at C-suite level with some of the biggest organizations, and I just wanted to acknowledge, her great contributions as well. I myself have learned a lot from her, and who knows, maybe next year in the future she'll be able to come along too, because I know she feels that really great connection as well.
Yeah.
And finally, the other thing is, I'm very studious. I've been looking at. I know the network has some great sponsors. I've been looking at their websites. I really been trying to get to know many of the different partners and the organizations or that will be coming and being represented at the Congress, and it just looks like a fantastic range of people, organizations and brands coming together. So yeah, absolutely, I really I'm getting excited now, and I can't wait. And thank you very much for my invitation.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So I'd say the thought running through my head, Paul, is kind of related to what you shared. More than 20 years ago, I learned in one of my programs and doing research, and I've not seen anything different in the last 20 plus years, that the primary catalyst for change in this culture, in Western culture at least, is crisis. And so while we consider this the land of opportunity, crisis basically means to me that people don't change until staying the same is more uncomfortable than letting go and shifting. And so my whole notion, I talk about inspiring people to live a clearer purpose. You don't need a crisis. We're surrounded by opportunities, and that's kind of what this whole conversation evolves around, is looking at your values and looking at your leadership style and the ways of seeing the world and the models you're living from, and getting clear. It's like, wait a minute, what do I want? And to some extent, that's really what being a part of this Congress represents for me, is getting clear, what does sustainability mean now, and how do I internalize that? And again, it's not so much something that I do. But Simon, you're talking about the spa down there that's doing so, or the salon that's doing so well down there. It's almost more a notion of who they've chosen to be, in spite of economy and stimulus and all this other stuff. It's like, no. Here's our values. Who's where we choose to be, and this is where we're going to plant ourselves. And that notion really speaks strongly to me. So that's something I hope that our work helps contribute to the members, and they go back home feeling vitalized and clear and able to take their ideas and put them into action and express that in their life. So I'm thrilled.
Well, thank you, Larry, and thank you, Simon. I'm even more excited. I was very excited before we started this, and I've read Holonomics, and I have an idea, but just hearing you talk and seeing the synergy is really remarkable. So I don't want to keep anybody longer than we promised here. So with that, I will go ahead and thank you, Simon, for joining us. Thank you, Larry, both of you, for taking the time today. Look forward to seeing you both in California in a short 4 weeks.
Yep.
And in the meantime, everybody, thank you for listening to this Hangout. I hope it's been valuable for you. And we'll go ahead and sign off from Jackson Hole, Wyoming, from Longmont, Colorado, and
Bye.
from Sao Paulo in Brazil. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Cheers.